Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to be here today with you and Elizabeth Sawyer, the CEO of Bennett International Education Consultancy. How's it going, Elizabeth?
It's going well, Ben. Thank you for having me on your show. Happy to be here.
It's really nice to have you here because you are one of my kind of people. Okay, I'm going to tell you something you may not know about me.
Please
But
do.
I was an English major in college, and everybody laughed at me. Not everybody. I mean, there's people in my class who were like, "No, I get it." But family, I dated this girl from Russia or from Ukraine. Shouldn't conflate the two. And her family was like, "Why are you studying English? We don't know English. We need English. Why are you taking English?" And people just didn't get it forever in my life. And I feel like you get it because you were an English teacher at one point.
Yes, I was. I was a literature teacher, high school.
What
In
grade? What grade?
10th, 11th, and 12th
Oh,
primarily
bless you.
for about 15 years.
Fabulous. I remember my high school English teachers. So my four favorite teachers, the first come to my mind were English teachers. Great people, most of them. 15 years. I got to ask
Yeah.
you, we're going to hop into relocation. We're going to hop in.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about kids in the process. We're going to talk about all that. But you know what? I like to go down like cool little rabbit holes real quick with people and understand their origin story, if you will. What was one of your favorite novels to teach in high school?
Oh, wow. Have always loved teaching The Great Gatsby.
Oh,
So a classic, and anybody of a certain age anyway who went through high school in the US probably read The Great Gatsby or something else by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I think it's beautifully written. I think it has a lot to say about American society. And just if you like language, it's just dripping with the beauty of language.
dripping with the beauty of language. See, this is
Sorry,
the kind of
sorry, sorry.
commentary that we don't get when we have regular relo people on.
I
Okay,
know, I
nothing is
know.
dripping on this show. We do not drip enough, to be completely honest with you, Elizabeth. If I'm
Well,
being candid, get in the comments, check in. I want to know who you are, where you are, and what are you dripping with today. Also, what is your favorite novel that either from your childhood or that you've read recently? My wife is a bookworm. She tries to read a book a month. Um, are you a big reader still, avid reader, Elizabeth?
I try. And we're all pretty busy here in relocation, but
I've
yes,
heard.
I'm always reading something. And here at Bennett, believe it or not, we have a Bennett book club.
Okay.
And we I know, I saw that, like, wow.
No,
Uh
no, we have one too, and
oh,
I'm.
do you?
This is an inside look for people in my company because
Okay.
ours went off the rails a few weeks ago. But anyway,
Well,
continue your
ours
book
is
club.
small, but we're always encouraging people to join us. And we started with the idea that we would read books that related to education. And we have evolved, and I have a great team member who picks fabulous books. And I wouldn't say we do it every month, but every couple of months we get together and talk about a book and have a good time. So
Now, this is so. I love this. Are these fiction or nonfiction?
it can be either. So we read one recently that was really interesting called Africa is Not a Country. Notes on a Bright Continent. And it was a combination, sort of historical, sociological. I think we all felt that we walked away having learned an enormous amount about the history of Africa as a continent,
Love it.
and with a lot that we can put to use. So,
I love
yeah.
it. Africa is not a country. That's so great. I saw a graphic recently and it showed all these countries that could fit into the continent of Africa. It was like the US, China, Brazil, all these, and we talk about it like it's this monolith,
Mhm.
right? I mean, even I've been guilty, right? On the show, we've done Africa Week, right? And then we bring people on from different parts, and it's just so vast. There's 47 countries or something like that. It's just incredible. So tell us now, how did you go from being an English teacher, English literature? I have to be careful, English literature, because people say I was an English literature major, and I correct them. I was more on the writing side, which I find very appropriate because I write a lot of email. But how did you go from being an English literature teacher for 15 years to getting into education or
So
consultancy?
yes, so it actually was a very natural trajectory, and I was lucky. I had been a teacher for many years, and then I was taking time out to raise my own kids. And then it was time to go back to work, and I was in that chapter of having to reinvent myself, as all women do, or men who stay at home with their
Sure.
kids and then go back into the professional world. And a friend said, well, listen, before you go back to the classroom, I want you to meet Georgia Bennett. And I said, well, who's she? And he said, well, she owns an education consulting company. And I said, what's education consulting? And then he explained what relocation was and
Yeah,
education consulting was.
I get it.
And that
Yeah, because you hear education consulting, you're like, you're either getting an education or you're not getting an education. What's the
right.
consulting between the two?
Right. And I thought, what's sort of the big deal?
Yeah.
And then I only really fully understood it once I started to do it. But met Georgia. She sort of heard my story of growing up and going to school in different countries. And it was just sort of an instant love affair with education consulting in the relocation space.
I love it. I love it. I want to give a couple shout outs and I want to hear some more of this story here. Get in the comments. I want to know what questions you have about education from a relocation or expat perspective. I want to know what your thoughts are about this as a benefit. Is this something we should be offering more of? Is this a need that you see? I'm really curious. Get in the comments if you're watching this out there. I want to hear from you. Hit that like button. Sarah Schmidt, thanks, Ben. So fabulous. Look at this, Sarah. Sarah's wonderful too, by the way, if you didn't know that.
She is.
Adrian, hello from Glomo. What's up, Adrian? Oh, that's great. Thanks for being here, buddy. Aaron, checking in. High school English teachers are the best.
Aw.
Aaron, who is your favorite teacher? Give her or him a shout out. Here, never mind that I started that previous
A
sentence
woman
with a
after
lower.
my own heart.
Yeah, can we get a break on these ending a sentence with a preposition or things? Can we just forget that? I mean, okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask you a question. I mean, what's the role of grammar these days and all this short form messaging that we're doing?
Well, it's funny. Everybody laughs at me because I punctuate my texts. I use semicolons, commas.
Oh,
My kids are just probably mortified by me. And I'm moving along in seeing and acknowledging that language evolves. A run-on sentence no longer makes my hair stand on end. So I'm just trying to learn, actually, to take a backseat with my opinions and follow the flow, which is
love it.
easy on the punctuation.
Yeah, I think language is like there to communicate. And when it gets in the way of communicating, because we're so concerned with the form of it, now I've seen those examples where if you omit a comma, that changes everything.
Right.
I get it, and I have one of my favorite professors was Jeffrey Berman at SUNY Albany, who taught a Hemingway course where me and my wife kind of fell in love in this class, and he talked about the sexy semicolon quite a bit. So I respect the semicolon. I do. I promise. I don't know how to use it 100%, but I do respect it. Jana, happy Tuesday. Can't find all the great words to express how much I respect and how much Elizabeth inspires me and is part of my journey in the industry.
Oh, thank you, Jana.
Dripping with respect, adulation, it sounds like here. Farrell, so happy to hear and learn more about Bennett. Farrell says, I'm still old school. Don't like the slow death of the English language. Punctuate all you want.
Thank you, Farrell. I'll send you a text full of punctuation.
What about like changing words like your to like you are, like you're?
See, they mean different things. And, your versus your like you apostrophe RE, they actually mean different things. So, I'm having a hard time just going with the flow on that. And the thing is, punctuation, it did serve a purpose. I kind of have a problem, but I'm trying to roll with this too, with nouns.
Have a problem. Lean into it.
lean into my problem of nouns being turned into verbs. So for example, it used to be you wrote in your journal. Now you do your journaling. Or people were scrapbooking for a long time. They put things in a scrapbook. They gathered, they presented, they glued, they adhered, whatever they did it in this in the scrapbook, but they weren't scrapbooking. And so it's all, the shortcut is not always better.
But would you gather a group of friends and say, come over to my home on Saturday so we can adhere together?
No, no, no. That was for the scrapbook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But like Googling, right? This is my favorite
well,
one, right?
yeah,
Google
yeah,
it. Googling.
right, right. And there are some things, yes, as I say, language also is in the service of people, not the reverse. So as it evolves.
That is one of my favorite quotes on this show. Language is in the service of people, not the reverse. Wow. I love it. This is fantastic learning stuff already.
My colleagues can remind me of that when I'm word picking.
So I know that's like one of those things that's going to appear on your desk, like, print it out. So you went from being a teacher to getting into this business and kind of connecting with an experience earlier in your life. You talk about going to schools in other places. Tell us some of those stories.
So I wasn't kind of what we think of as the typical expat kid who moves every 2 years with, a pharma or a financial services parent or whatever. But so my father was Irish, my mother American. I was born in New York. We moved to England when I was 2, and I started school there, just in my local little preschool or whatever. And then we moved to Ireland, to my father's hometown, where he wrote for the Irish newspapers. And so my first memories and my first schooling experience was in a village in Ireland. And I really kind of grew up Irish.
What better place for a literary person to grow up than Ireland? I mean,
I know, right?
the legacy of literature in Ireland.
Yes, absolutely. And and I went to 2 different schools so I went to school in England, and then I went to 2 different schools in Ireland. One was sort of the local Catholic school, and then one was a more Protestant school. And this was back in the 70s when that actually made a difference.
And that mattered. Yeah, it was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
In Ireland, especially.
Yep. And then my parents decided to move back to the US so that my brother and I could do high school and college here. And so we came to Massachusetts, and for various reasons, I really could have used a good education consultant. I started high school here when I had just turned 12. And so was sort of on a...
That's early, 12, isn't it?
Yeah.
That because you were so exceptional, or because that good Irish upbringing that you had?
Well, combination of both, of course. So yes. So then I went to high school here and college, and did graduate school in the US. And so I kind of had all of that in my blood. Did not know that I was actually part of a relocation world, but went into also teaching French and Spanish, and because I was just drawn to everything international, and sort of kind of had a certain firepower that I wanted to spend on that. And then when I found relocation, and I think my first meeting with an RMC, every single consultant in the room was from a different country, and I felt like I'd landed at the UN. And
found your people.
Yeah, I found my people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, expats don't really, maybe know they're expats, especially when you start from such a young age, and it's just the paradigm that you have. You don't know maybe how unique and different and yet valuable those experiences can be. What did you first think when you discovered this world of relocation?
I just loved it. I mean, I had no, I'd been a teacher, and I was passionate about education, but I was sort of ready to do something on a bigger picture kind of way. But I didn't really know what that was. And then this sort of, somebody drew back the curtain and said, here's the world of relocation. And this is the world of kids who are being moved, and some of them every 18 months, and families who are trying to make the right decisions for them. And to kind of come from the education world And lots of people can study the education world. You can study different systems and so forth, but you have to kind of come at it with an interest in that, and a genuine caring for kids. And it was just like somebody handed me the pair of shoes that fit.
I love
So
that. I love that analogy. Do we talk about the kids enough in relocation?
I don't think we do. I think everybody means well, but I think that when you're going to set, when you're going to move an employee somewhere, very naturally, the first questions that come to mind are things like tax equalization and visas and all of those kind of immediate logistical things that you have to get a handle on before the real discussions can happen. And I think maybe that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect between HR or global mobility or whoever's idea it was to move this person and the reality from the family side, which is if that person is a parent, the very first thing that they're going to be thinking about is, wow, it could be, they might say, wow, what an incredible opportunity this is going to be for my kids. Or they might think, oh my God, I can't move my kids. But
Right.
those kids they're at the center of the relocation, whether everybody knew that at the beginning or not.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I agree. And get in the comments here. We've got some incredible people here checking in. We got Sherry Venezia checking in over here. I love it. I love Sherry. Sherry's great. I met Sherry. Real quick. I met Sherry at a BAM event. I'm not sure if it was the first time or not, but I connected with her really deeply at a BAM event. She showed up to this truck pull. We're on an aircraft carrier, and she's got a Love and Relo hat on.
Aw.
And I freaking melted. I'm like, this woman is my people. I love you so much. And I took a selfie with her, which I don't know if if it made LinkedIn or not, but that meant so much to me. And we like spent the whole evening hanging out, talking, and she's just such a wonderful person. So shout out to Sherry. Appreciate you joining in. And she said she was a Gather and Adhere fan. Does that mean you were a scrapbooker, Sherry? This is like Jeopardy where they give you a
I'm
clue.
never going to live this one down.
Yeah. This is great. Richard from London Town. What's up, Richard? Good to hear from you. It's been a minute. Hope you're well. Hope the family's well. Martin Foxwell, nice to be in touch this week with Elizabeth. Super cool. Martin says he's been a big fan and partner of Bennett going back to Georgia's
Georgia.
days. Hey, a wonderful human being and true pioneer.
She is, and she was, yeah.
This is great. Keep those questions coming and comments coming. I want to know if you're watching this right now. We love to be interactive here, Elizabeth. I want to know if you're watching this, what do you think the role of children should be in a relocation? How much should we accommodate the child and come up with these benefits to suit them? And what are those benefits should they be? And sometimes do we care too much about the? I know people are going to roast me for this. I hope my wife's not watching, but sometimes do we care too much about the kids, right? Because I'm sure people weren't asking you at 2 if you wanted to go to the UK, to grow up there, and people weren't asking if you want to go to Ireland. You know what I mean? So I would love to know, because I think, and you know what? Criticize me if you want, but I think sometimes we care too much about what the kids think when they're 12 years old about relocating. And sometimes we miss out on some really enriching experiences, both domestically and internationally, because we're so afraid if the kids are going to be able to assimilate and adapt. What do you think of that, Elizabeth? Feel free to argue with me. I love it.
No. I'm actually thinking about your use of language there, that you're saying we care too much about the kids. And it isn't that you're caring too much about the kids. That's really more about a parenting style. Whether you're running a democracy or whether kids have a say in that discussion, like, hey, shall we all move to London for a couple of years? So that isn't about caring, I don't think.
Sure, that's fair.
And when I say caring about the kids, I'm really talking about it more from a corporate standpoint, honestly, in terms of, and you know that, you're just playing
Yeah, I'm being silly.
You're being silly, but no, but at the same time, I hear what you're saying. The question that you're posing is really about parenting and kind of what it is to parent in our day and age, and how much of it is sort of top down from parents saying, hey kids, we've decided we're going to do this and trust us, we're the parents and it's going to be great, versus, let's all sit around the table and discuss that. And obviously that goes to parenting style and also the age of children. You're not going to ask a 2-year-old if they want to move, but you should have that conversation with your 16-year-old. Like, how do you feel about this and how can we
Right.
make this work? So,
Yes. How do we make this work versus are we going to do this or not?
right.
I think are different conversations. And we'll get to kind of the corporate benefits and how we take care of families once that decision's been made. But I raise this point because we've seen changes in who relocates, why, and what are relocatable populations, or at least from a perception standpoint. And I don't see, and this is observational, I don't have the data, and if anyone does, please share it in the comments, but I don't see as many kind of mature families that have the teenagers and have the large home, and the kind of the more mid executive kind of folks that are kind of in the, and maybe they're the parents are in their 40s and 50s, maybe the kids are in their tweens and teens. I don't see that relocating population as much as I see the singles, I see the new couples, I see maybe the young children. But something happens, I feel, and I'm totally advancing my own theory based with no facts. That's how we do on this very low bar. This is not journalism. This is entertainment, right? No, but where we see those, we see the smaller ship. We talk about small shipments. We talk about renters. We talk about these different types of families, and I think that I suspect that it's because we value the child's career over sometimes the parents' career. Right? Oh, they're an AP calculus. They're on, they're on the football team or the cheerleading team, all these things as if they can't make friends somewhere else. This is just my theory.
I think you're actually kind of right though, Ben, in that
Ooh.
if we looked at the populations that we serve the most, in terms of the age of kids, it definitely skews more towards younger kids. And I think it's natural families are much more inclined to uproot a youngster and sort of plan on being home, wherever home is, by the time kids are kind of really getting into those high school years. And it is true that depending on where you're going, not necessarily if there are good international or British curriculum or American curriculum schools where you're going, but in some instances, especially if you're being expected to use a local school system, you really can't transplant kids into that system once they're past a certain age. So depending on where you're going, the availability of schools, corporate policy, all of that, I do think that a lot of possible would-be expats do choose to stay home when their kids reach a certain age.
What's that about? Cause we got some great comments coming in. Keep the comments coming. We're going to read them and double click into those. But what are those ages where you can't really integrate them?
It depends so much on where you're coming from and where you want to go home to. So if you are an American going somewhere in the world and you think you might come back when your child is in high school, you can totally do that, because the American education system is, I always say, it's very forgiving. You can arrive in the American education system in 12th grade, and as long as you can get, your credits apportioned correctly, you can graduate. We don't have sort of exam points along the way in our pre-K to grade 12. We don't have these exam points where we eliminate kids, and a lot of countries do.
Eliminate? What do you mean? But like they don't get to go to school anymore? Or like you're voted off
Well,
the
it
island?
could be that that you test in certain countries onto a certain track, and you test young, and if you're on that track, this track is university bound, This track is kind of a training program bound,
No.
and this is like an apprenticeship.
And this is just jail, penitentiary over here.
Yeah, there you go.
That was my track.
That you're making a comeback.
Yeah, I did. I've really turned it around. I'll be honest with you.
So it was that English major.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, so it really depends where you're coming from, how much flexibility you have to go home.
Wow, that's something I had not really considered. Let's see what these comments are saying, Elizabeth. This is when it gets exciting because you never know. Let's see here. All right. Richard from London. Let's see what you got, Richard. Interesting topic. Met with my son who will be leaving the UK at the end of February, and a question came up regarding sending kids when they arrive to the local school and they would not grow up speaking English at school, going to an international school or a boarding school. Richard, where is this? A common issue, I guess, but new to us. How does that make you feel, Richard, that they wouldn't grow up speaking English? Would they learn English in the home? Richard, I need more information. Do you see this kind of play out, Elizabeth?
So if I understand the scenario, when you, and kind of broadening it, when you decide what type of school your child is going to go to, you're also deciding the language that they're going to be using as their language of instruction.
Is that like the number one consideration that people kind of use?
It's certainly a big one. And so, for example, if you are coming here from, we always say to families, maintain your home country language. Because if you go to England for 3 years, or you come to the US, or you go to Australia, or you send your child to an international school, who knows where English is the language of instruction, and then you go back to the Netherlands or Germany or Brazil or wherever in 4 years, it's not going to have been enough for you to just keep chatting with your child in their native language at home. They need to maintain it on an academic level where they can read it and write it. Because when they go home again and they get plopped into their home education system and have to do a big national exam, great that they have English maybe, but if they're not still on assignment, they can be stuck.
Yeah, I can imagine they come back and they're reading or speaking at a 5th grade, 6th grade level, because it's just what's in the home, right? I mean, how many words do we really use around the kitchen table, right? Yeah, interesting one. Let's see. Let's keep it going here. Oh, Sherry, you're great. Let's see. Drew, I knew somebody would get me. Drew says you can never care too much about the kids. They are all that matters. No criticism, Ben. The relocation experience is great. I know, Drew. You're a great dad, Drew. Very cool. Mike Falia, another great dad here in the comments here. Checking in a little late from rainy SoCal. What's up? Hit that like button out there. Get in the comments. Ask questions. Sarah coming in. Look at Sarah. I love when people bring stats. This is so great. It's one thing I wish we did a better job of on the show is bringing, because I do great with the conjecture. But bringing the actual facts in, I could use a stats person. Sarah says 55% of families who move have school-age kids. Huh. Interesting. What? But I'm curious. Elementary, middle, high school. I don't. Do those even translate to other cultures? But I'm curious though. What age school? So this means though that there must be an enormous need for Bennett's services, right?
There is an enormous need. I think
you like that one, right?
I do. I like that one. It is an endless need. And we simply need to let people know how much they need us, because often they realize it too late.
Tell us a little bit about, give us the pitch. I mean, tell us a little bit about, what does Bennett do? Mm-hmm. And give us kind of some examples, some use cases.
So our bread and butter service is really helping families find the right school for their children wherever they're going in the world. But we do that in the context, and this is kind of what makes it education consulting versus just kind of school finding. we do it in the context of the larger picture that I've already been going on about. So a family who, let's say they're coming from Brazil and we'll say they're coming to Texas, and they're going to be going back to Brazil in 3 years. And so we really, we really start with the child. Who is this child? What are they like as a learner? What are their strengths? What are their challenges? Do they have any special needs? And special needs is huge, as we all know, and just becoming more and more so as all of the different kinds of diagnoses increase. And so we really kind of start with who that child is and what they need now, what has been working, what they need now, what they're going to need in 2 or 3 years. And then that really informs our process of saying, okay, well, we think these might be the kinds of schools you should look at, and we're going to help you look at them and take you through that process.
So you give them like kind of a list of schools and have a conversation about the pros and cons?
That's part of it. The list is one of the tools along the way. So first we would speak with a family and really understand who their child is. And then we would sort of go away and we would do our research that is sort of tailored to that child. So for example, it might be that, we've worked with lots and lots of families going into a particular area in Houston, we'll say, but this child has a particular need or is an English language learner. And so we want to look at the English language learning program wherever they're going and look at the demographic of that. So this is a child coming from Brazil, so speaking Portuguese. What percentage of the kids in the ELL classroom are Portuguese speakers versus Spanish speakers versus Russian speakers? And so is that a good ELL situation for that child? Or should we recommend another district? So it's pretty granular.
Wow.
Not every family needs our service, honestly, but there are many who really could benefit from it. And many times we find people come to us, corporate clients come to us the first time when they've had a problem. And our first experience with them is we're doing cleanup, which is not ideal, but
yeah, it's really interesting. We got some amazing comments coming in here. Please keep them coming. I want to get to all of these. They're phenomenal. So help me understand, Elizabeth. Give me like an ideal customer for you. What does that look like?
So an ideal customer is a company that really puts people first, is really walking the walk of the employee experience and also the family experience. And, we here in the industry, there's more discussion about the importance of the family experience. And I know that there are trends that come and go, but we do love this one and hope that it sticks around for a while. So the ideal client is one who comes to us and says, we want to look after the family ecosystem on assignment, and for practical reasons, because that's what's going to make the assignment work.
Yes.
And, we can't afford to give the moon to every single employee when they move, but who should have some level of assistance? How do we figure out who they are, and who allows us to be consultative with them on how best to support them and their relocating employees?
This is interesting. So, and I've got questions here, but we've got some really cool comments coming in. So Richard's grandchild, I guess, Richard, is moving to unborn grandchild, is moving to Oman. And there was, I think, some concern that they may grow up not speaking English, their parents' native language. Does Bennett cover children moving from UK to Oman? Not even born yet. Thinking ahead.
We have time to get our ducks in a row, but yes, we do, everywhere on the globe.
Very cool. And Brad is saying, Brad, I love you. He's saying, as a parent, I've always subscribed to the theory that if you create havoc and chaos in your children's lives, they in turn will recreate the same chaos in your own life. Isn't a peaceful home life what we all value the most? You know what my dad always said? He said, "You pay for your raising." So what that means is, if you were hell as a kid, then your kids are going to be hell for you. It's similar but different, Brad, to what you're saying. Brad, I know your kids; they are phenomenal. You and Shemaine have done an excellent job, and you do have a lot of peace in your home, and it's a very there's a lot of continuity there, and I do see that in your kids. So you know what? I guess maybe you're right, and explains why my kids are such troublemakers. So you know what, that checks out. What do you think about what Brad said there, Elizabeth?
Well, I was just going to say that relocating your kids doesn't, I don't want us to think about it as a negative, because it is certainly chaotic as you're moving, but it doesn't have to be chaos and havoc. And that's kind of my point. If you do it the right way, and if kids are, given an environment in which they can thrive, then yes, it may be a little bit chaotic, but you could also call that adventurous, and just the family experience of a lifetime. And I'm really sorry, but Gus, my dog,
What's up, Gus?
Gus really wants to come in, so I hope
No
you'll
need to
forgive me.
discuss much, Gus.
I
All
just
right.
have to let him in, or his
Yeah, let him
clawing
in.
is
Let
going to get
Gus
loud.
in.
Be
I know
right
a
back.
claw hole in your whole door. We don't need that, Gus. Jill checking in here. What's up, Jilly? Sherry says, I
He's
was
always
relocated.
wanted to be on
Oh,
your
it's
show, Ben.
fine. Gus, we love Gus. We get a lot of animals. We get a lot of pets on this. You wouldn't think because they don't speak the language, but we get a lot of pets. And you know what? They're more interesting sometimes than the guests. So we're open minded here and inclusive. Sherry says, I was relocated at age 17, middle of high school years. It was scary and a little bit socially challenging at first, but it worked out well. It was a local relocation. We remained in California, so probably should be assessed on a case by case basis. I was relocated when I was about 5 or 6 from Texas to New York. There was some culture shock there for sure. I like to think it made me a better adult, but I was a pretty terrible kid, to Brad's point earlier.
17 is late in the game for if that was your first relocation. And interesting that you are in relocation, Sherry. And I wonder if that relocation at that age kind of influenced your,
Right.
led you here in
Maybe
some
trying to
way.
resolve some things maybe through our work here. This Richard says, Elizabeth may relate to this. Me as an English kid moving only to Wales in the 1970s was very different and left a lot of childhood friends. I reckon made me a chronic hoarder because I hate letting things go. I think as a result of the uprooting.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Do you offer therapy from people who have trauma associated with relocation?
Not yet.
Could be something to think about. This is great. Kathy says, being a mother, I think the kids really need to have all the support they need to adjust successfully and happily. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this from a corporate policy standpoint, right? Because you're talking about your ideal customer, client being a company who really cares about people and walks the talk and puts people first. Um, what types of relocation benefits and policies should companies be including to assist families with children when relocating?
I think that a lot of those services that are kind of considered the soft services are ones that are incredibly helpful to families and can make a huge difference. And many times when you look at the larger cost of a relocation, whether it's cultural training or spousal assistance or education consulting to place kids in schools, whatever those sort of soft services might be, I think that they are really valuable. In an age of core flex policies, they tend to reside in the flex part. And I think those of us who are offering those services feel very passionately that they should be in the core part. And I was talking with our friends at Net Expat, and who had published a paper with Mercer recently, where they said, let's rename that, from Core Flex to Care Flex. And I think that's, just to not have those things that are the softer services be sort of the afterthought.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because I've never thought of it in terms of the soft services, and I guess I don't know what the other side is, the hard services,
The
but
logistical ones, I would say.
just, yeah, the right. And I see a devaluing of those logistical services, or I'm gonna use the word hard services because I like it. Like moving, gosh, I see moving budgets getting cut all the time. I see obviously what's happening in real estate right now with home sale transactions and things of that nature, with the commissions and things like that being kind of undermined through some of the lawsuits that have been going on, and just home sale not being offered as much in policies and things like that being kind of taken away. And these were always considered kind of core to traditional managed relocation. And yet on the flip side of that, I see a lot of discussion and a lot of discussion around the softer services, the intercultural training, the spousal assistance. All the ones that you mentioned are getting a lot more press. Now, I don't know if adoption has gone up or not. I guess I leave that to you. I mean, do you see more traction right now in this area, or is it still to come, or what are your thoughts? What are you saying?
I think there's definitely more discussion around it, and it also kind of, to some degree, it pairs with a more real commitment to diversity, I think, in that you don't want certain populations self-selecting out of relocation, and encouraging families, whether they have a special needs kid or whether they have, whatever the reason might be. So there's certainly more discussion around it right now. And I hope that will, that will continue. The pendulum is always swinging every which way in relocation, as we know, and corporate budgets are influenced by kind of global economics and everything else. So,
Yeah. It's interesting because I see a real tendency towards well-being, mindfulness, self-care, right? Taking care, checking in and taking care of oneself and, our family, and being there for our families, right? I mean, I see a lot of emphasis on this, while at the same time, the internet's made procuring those other services a lot easier. So, it feels like the time is very appropriate for a focus more on the family and on the quality of life that we're providing. So I
yeah,
would be. It seems like the right
yeah,
time.
yeah. And yes, and I think everything. I think that COVID and kind of the toll that it took on families, the toll that it took on kids, has sort of opened everybody's mind a little bit further to an undeniable need to put the focus there.
Yeah, we're also getting shout outs for Gus right now. Melissa, it was hoping,
Hey, Willie.
wondering, like when you go to a concert and you don't know if, somebody's going to come out or not.
He's resting right now, but I will check in with him shortly and see
Yeah.
if he would be
Check in with Gus.
willing.
It's funny how Gus really, really just had to be in the room,
He did,
and now
yes.
he's in the
Everybody
room.
else knew that they had to stay out.
But now that he's in the room, he's like, okay, cool. Just
Yeah,
want to see what's going on. Very
that's
cool.
his spot.
That's the Gus spot here. Look at this here. Richard says I already have too many therapists. Super interesting. Janet, Elizabeth has some interesting art behind her. I tuned in late. Maybe this was already discussed, but by the way, Ben, loving your artwork you've been sharing. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I do some art and stuff.
Oh, well, thanks for noticing. That is a painting that my eldest son made me. It says "Mom."
Well,
For
that's great.
a birthday and a couple of other of his pieces out there. He's a struggling artist out in soggy San Diego.
It says
So,
mom. Is it like street art? Oh, it is.
yes.
Oh, I love it.
Well, thank you.
I'm a huge fan. So I do street art also. And not that's a large format, which is awesome. But I do street art also, and I've been sharing it on my Instagram page, and that's what Janet's talking about. So we're like kind of kindred spirits. That's awesome, Mom. That's great.
Yeah.
What a nice son.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm over here holding up my iPad in front of my face. It's probably not the way these things are done. I made my mom a coffee mug, a mom coffee mug, and I still love it. Let's see, Farrell. These things go all over the place too, Elizabeth. By the way, so I apologize. Sorry, not sorry. Things are going crazy. Totally off topic, but here's one for your book club: eats, shoots, and leaves. The zero tolerance approach to punctuation.
All right, Farrell, I'm going to have to find you on LinkedIn, and I'm writing this down. Thank you.
Eats, shoots, and leaves. So if we didn't eats, shoots, and leaves, so like someone could eat, they could shoot, and then they could leave. But like, is this a comment on if we don't have commas and stuff, it reads different?
I don't know
I
yet.
think it's what if we take the comma out, then they're eating, shoots, and leaves. But if they eat and then they shoot and then they leave, it's one of those
I think
deals.
it's probably more shoots, as in shoots that you would eat.
Right, but it's not. It is if you take the comma out. If you leave the comma in, they eat, comma, they shoot, and then they leave. But if there's
Oh, I
no
see.
comma, then they're eating, shoots, and
Correct.
leaves. It's one of those deals. Think Panda Bear, Farrell says. Yeah, but it could be Kung Fu Panda if there's no if there's a comma. This is great. Multiple meanings to the title, depending on the punctuation. Thank you, Chris. Everybody's with the pandas. Everybody gets the panda jokes. Note to self. Okay. This is fun. This is really cool. What advice would you give to someone who manages relocation programs, either on the RMC side or the corporate side, as far as how to handle education for expats?
I think I would say, and not just because I have a business related to it, but I would say to factor it in from the beginning and to be sure to provide whatever kind of support can be provided to a family with relocating children to help them make wise decisions. Now, sometimes that wise decision might end up being that they not move because they have a child with special needs that cannot be sufficiently supported wherever they might be going, and that's a discussion that should happen before everybody is uprooted and moved, and it's a mess. But whatever form of support can be offered based on that company's policy or in somebody's role as a consultant with a relocation management company, just that be in the foreground of your thinking, it be front and center. If there are kids involved, they are a huge reality in relocation, and they can torpedo an assignment
Yeah.
faster than anything else.
Family just can, and they conspire too. So it's a multiplier effect.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good advice. I appreciate that. You know, you seem like a lot of fun. And I'm not just saying that because you also value English literature. I want to play a game. You want to play a game with me, Elizabeth?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. This she's like, okay, if we have to, if we must. Um, so we have a game on this show, and I'm doing this. Our super producer Adam is in Las Vegas right now, and I'm here, and I'm working the controls. Okay, so I apologize to everyone in advance. But we're gonna play our game. Overrated, underrated. Okay, Elizabeth, very complex game. Do you know how to play this game?
Nope.
Okay. There's two rules. Okay. The first is I'm going to give you a topic, and you are going to tell me if it is underrated or overrated.
Okay.
The second is that I will then tell you if you are correct.
Okay.
Okay, she gets the irony. Good. That was the first test. Okay, sounds good. Let's get started. Some of these you have picked, and some of these I have picked.
Okay.
Let's start with one I have picked. All right, you know what? Let's keep it Englishy.
Okay.
All right, the word y'all, overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Praise God. Okay, continue. Tell me more.
So it's so funny that you would bring that up, because I had dinner with an English friend the other evening, and she was talking about when she first came to this country, and she was working with someone from down south who would always use y'all, and she would say, "Well, what would the plural of that be?" And the friend said, "All y'alls,
Oh, y'all.
all y'alls." And so I'm kind of, I'm kind of fond of that expression.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate that because you got to have a sense of humor with these things. And it can't just be so by the book. I mean, y'all is one of those. And I used to get this growing up. So I came from Texas to New York. And so I'd say, hey, y'all, you know, when I got this twang and I had this high voice because I was a little kid. Hey, y'all. And I had probably had a little mullet going on or something like that. Who knows? And I'd say y'all and I'd say ain't. And I remember my second grade teacher, Miss Major, said, ain't in the dictionary. And I went over to the dictionary and I opened it up and it was right towards the front. And I found it, and I still lost somehow the argument, but I just think that there are words that get a bad rap. And I think y'all's
Well, that's such a warm word, and it's also very cultural. I mean, it's a part of the US. It's great.
look at this. And we got Paulie Potak checking in. Paul Potak went to college with me up in Albany, New York. I hadn't talked to Paul in 20 years. Love you, Paul. Hope you're doing well. You're in Dallas. Come check us out. Stop by the office here in Richardson. Love to see y'all. All right, even though it's singular. Y'all is a plural. You is the singular, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, Drew, the plural of y'all is yens, according to my Gigi. Is yens Pittsburgh? It might be Pittsburgh. Let me know. Janet Turner, love it, y'all. Hey, Janet, love it. Fantastic. Okay, well, you know what? You are 1 for 1, Elizabeth. You're doing excellent right now. For somebody who hasn't played this game often. Yeah, come through, Paulie. Let's see here. All right, second one up is underrated or overrated? Putting your phone away.
Oh, it's underrated.
Okay. Tell me more.
So how many of us can put our phones down and go and have dinner for, let's say, an hour and a half, 2 hours?
That gives me agita just talking about it.
And I had a rule raising my kids, no phones at the dinner table, and everybody had to leave their phone.
What year was this?
This was within the last 5 years. No phones at the dinner table. Now, over time, that has been eroded. And now the phones are in our back pockets or they're on the edge of the table. And I do think that if you can somehow do it, it is so refreshing. Like, you feel different. If you haven't picked up your phone in 2 hours, you feel different. If you've had like uninterrupted human contact, eye-to-eye conversation, and then if you get that little endorphin kind of blip every time you see a text or an email or your notifications, whatever, then when you pick your phone up after not touching it for 2 hours, it'll be full of surprises for you. So
a treasure trove.
A treasure trove. Your endorphins will go through the roof. So I think it's incredibly hard for all of us, but if you can do it, it's really good.
It's almost like I like what you're saying. It's almost like you have to put it away and go to dinner somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I wouldn't even know how to get there
without
my phone. So like, I'd leave it in the car. Maybe that's what you do. You go to dinner, you leave it in the car.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
They say if you're trying to work on something And even knowing that even if you have it on silence, if it's nearby, it's distracting you. That we are so tuned into our phones that if you really want to be able to focus, it's not enough to just have it here, you know, not
Or turn it over.
turned over. It has to be in another room, because part of you is listening for it, keeping an eye on it, still relating to it. It's a person in our lives at this point.
You know, I didn't like your answer, but you made an excellent case.
Why, thank you.
You're 2 for 2, Elizabeth.
All right.
Watch out now. Don't start. It's too early to count your chickens. You may go all the way though here. All right, let's
Really
see here.
stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you just talked to me about putting my phone away for 2 hours in another room, leaving it at home, another building, somewhere else, a different city.
Your
So,
wife will
you know,
either love me or hate me for that.
well, it's another show. Doing things fast, overrated, underrated.
Overrated.
Okay. Tell me more.
So, I mean, there are certain things, if they're done fast, wonderful. But like, we're so all about speed. And, you know, it's what we already love about AI. And there are certain kind of things that are great, but not everything should be fast. Language, as we're all about the shortcuts. I worked with a family once for 8 months getting their child into a school in Mexico. And at the end of all of it, when I felt so close to this family, they wrote me THX for the support. And I thought, 8 months and you couldn't write the full word? You know, or, you know, multitasking. I think, you know, ideas, goals, visions, they come with empty time.
At least they didn't just send you the thumbs up emoji.
Yeah, well, if this was a while ago, so that's what I would have gotten now. Yeah.
So they wrote you was this an email?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought for some reason I was envisioning a card and THX on the card.
Oh,
They
no.
filled out the entire address
The
block,
card,
the
are you
return, the
kidding me?
stamp, THX.
You know, buy a card, write the card, mail a card. No card. No, and that's just, I was still growing my thicker skin and realizing that these were just professional relationships, and I didn't, you know, but I think we're so much about speed that we can miss out on a lot of enjoyment if we can slow it all down.
I love your point. I love your point. I think, I don't know. I'm a big fan of speed. I think we take too long to do things that are easy. Like, we overthink things. I mean, granted, yeah, underthink things too, like THX, great example, right? I think, you know what? We need to reallocate the time we spend on things. Some things we take too long with, and some things we don't take long enough with. And that's not one of the that wasn't one of the choices of answers. So you know what? You said overrated. All right, I'll give it to you. I'll give you the you know what? Tie goes to the runner. There you go. How's that for fast? All right, 3 for 3. Wow. Are you feeling the stress? I can see the sweat. Are we in 4K? I can see the sweat on the brow. All right, here we go. Let's see here. All right, the next one, fourth. Millennials and Gen Z. We're lumping them together. We're creating one mega category of kids these days. Why don't we just call this kids these days? Overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Oh, wow. Both of them, both groups. Do you have a favorite, millennials or Gen Z? Pick one.
Well, I have kids in both, so no, I can't have a favorite.
They're not watching.
Maybe they will someday. Maybe they'll Google their mother.
You'll be gone. It'll be one of those things where you're gone. They'll be looking through the internet. Oh, remember when mom was on this crazy show with this weird guy?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And one of them even got a shout out for his art. I mean, really.
For his art. Yeah. And he's like, maybe he made it. Like, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, okay. Millennials and Gen Z, kids these days. You said underrated?
Yeah.
Why?
So, well, I hope they're underrated. And
I hope they're underrated. They're my retirement plan. I hope they're underrated.
I think they're different. I think that their kids, they are of the technology age. And yes, you know, we're always changing and people are always evolving, but there are certain ways in which we got catapulted by technology. And I think that they're smart. in ways that many of us are not. I mean, we can learn technology, but we're not technology natives, as they say. And I know a lot of, and I am grouping them kind of into kids these days, or young adults, who are really passionate about making the world a better place and wanting to give back, and being, forward thinking and committed. So I'm hopeful. A little bit is about whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty. And, people have been saying kids these days, they just don't, complete the
Understand?
sentence since time
Well,
began.
they've been
So,
saying that for hundreds of years.
yeah.
Exactly. We were, you were kids these days, right? Like,
Hmm.
when Elvis came out, it was kids these days, right? So it's like, I love that take. I think you're so right on that. And you know what I like about kids these days? Plenty I don't like. But you know what I like about kids these days is they're so well informed.
Hmm.
They might be the first generation that thinks they know everything and actually does. Now they have no context, they have no experience to compare it
Yeah.
to contextualize it. But I mean, the way they look up every single thing, they have unlimited access to information, and it's being synopsized and shoved down their throat in 15-second increments. I mean, they've really become quite good at learning superficial, information.
They
And
have.
and they make better decisions. They don't drink as much. They're not smoking as much. Now, they're vaping and microdosing, but nonetheless, we're giving them the benefit of the doubt,
We're giving
okay?
them the benefit of the doubt.
Point is, when me and Paulie Potak were going to college in Albany, we were making a lot more bad decisions than these kids these days are making. They care about the environment. They care about the planet. They actually have the means and the understanding of how to do something about it in ways that they're more mobilized. Through the phone, you can actually have whole revolutions. You can change the world, with your mobile device these days. So I have a lot of hope for kids these days, and they'll grow up and they'll learn, and they'll get with the program a little bit, and they'll chill out a little bit, and they'll start buying houses a little bit, and they'll start normalizing and regressing.
Relocating with their kids.
Yeah, regressing to the mean like the rest of us have, and giving up on their hopes and dreams like we all do, and they'll become less idealized, for sure. But I think their baseline is higher than kids those days. So I'm bullish on them. Good stuff. You know what? You're messing around here. You're 4 for 4. You're on a heater, as we say. Let's see here. Oh gosh. You know what? I'm gonna give you a tough one. I'm giving you a tough one. Oh, let's see what this says. Overrated, underrated,
Oh,
moral compass.
underrated.
Oh, risky move.
Yeah. It's at the core.
I
It's at the core.
thought you were gonna go overrated. I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna get good." I got my popcorn. All right, underrated.
Forget about it.
Yeah. More. What does this mean? What does this mean? Moral compass.
um,
Since kids these days don't use a compass, they've never seen a compass. So
yeah, they wouldn't know what a
it's a
compass
moral
was.
compass.
Well, I think about it in terms of the work that we do as business owners, kind of what our moral compass is in running our businesses, in providing the services that we provide, in guiding our corporate clients. I think that it's sort of it's at the core of everything. It's the beacon, the guiding light.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just at an entrepreneur group today, and we were talking about core values, and we were going through these values exercises and things like that. And it's another thing that has come into it's become a must have. It used to be kind of a cool corporate speak thing like 30 years ago, corporate values, core values. And now it's like every company it's like required. It's like you're starting your company day one. What are your core values? It's because customers and employees require it. So when you're talking about this moral compass, I think it's interesting on a micro level as individuals that we have this, but I also think it's really interesting as a business person how businesses have to have it these days as well. It seems like to me.
Yeah, I came into business sort of through the back door, in that I was a high school teacher, as we talked about. And it's too simple to say, the education world is sort of a soft and nurturing and more morally driven world versus the business world. It's not that black and white, but it is true that the world of education, it's about creating environments where young people are safe, where they can thrive, where they can grow, where they learn. And so when I got into business, that was my experience. That was the world that I was from. So it was natural for me that was sort of the lens of looking after people and creating a collaborative environment and a respectful and trusting one, like as in a classroom, was sort of how I naturally approached things. And then and figuring out sort of how that played into also, you are running a business, and the bottom line is very important, and the function of business is profit and all of that. So looking for how the relationship between those two in a way that is healthy for my team, and will also enable growth and for a nice little company to exist long into the future. And I realized over time that they're not mutually exclusive at all. In fact, one supports the other. And if you, if you treat people right and you make conscientious decisions, then that pairs naturally in the long term with profit. To your point about core values and everything, I was reading how Boston Consulting Group a while ago did a study that showed that companies with a culture, a purpose-driven culture, actually thrive financially better than those that don't. So, well,
Yeah, I'd like to see data on that. I think it's interesting. I think when I even, I'm surprised these days when I see some of the largest companies come out and make statements that can be considered polarizing around, and I say polarizing, I mean, I kind of look at it in a good way, but I mean, around the environment, or around, the fact that we have to be good stewards of the environment and things of that nature. When they come out and make hardline statements, where you would have never seen a company make statements like that, where they didn't have to in the past. And even when I see, and I mean, I'm not holding up this company as a model as much as BlackRock, which is this enormous investment firm. Their CEO has been pretty out front on things like ESG and sustainability. And it's shocking because it's an investment bank. It's these are supposed to be the bad people in the world, right? And even these people are coming around and say, listen, this is a case for business, right?
right.
Like if we don't have a planet, we don't have a business, right? So, I just find it really interesting, the evolution in branding and the way companies feel it's an imperative to take a stand on this. Anyway, super cool. I know we're over time here. You've been really patient with me. Is there anything you want to leave people with as maybe a final thought here, Elizabeth?
Well, I mean, I've already said it more than once, just to remember the kids. And you relocate an employee, or if they have a family, then you're relocating a whole ecosystem, and it all has to thrive. And this was great fun, Ben. Thanks so much.
It was fun. I really, really enjoyed it, and love talking to people with a vocabulary and say things like dripping with, it's wonderful. I think.
Well, I'm glad you appreciated that.
I absolutely did. And thanks everybody who joined us today. Hit that like button. Thanks for being here. We wouldn't have a show without you. I believe this is our last show for the week. We did the cool exclusive with Anna Pop Sing Call from WERC yesterday. Now we have Elizabeth Sawyer on today from Bennett International. And next week, we've got 3 shows coming up. So that'll be exciting. And I'll be in DC for one of them. So anyway, thank you so much, Elizabeth Sawyer. And thanks for everybody for being here today.